first moved to Brookdale Hollow, I thought I'd found a hidden gem: quiet streets, warm porches, and neighbors who waved when they mowed their lawns. It felt like something out of a Hallmark movie. I'd just finalized my divorce and bought the little blue house on Honeybell Lane with the wraparound porch I'd dreamed of since I was a kid. I planted sunflowers out front, built a small raised bed for tomatoes, and added solar string lights along the fence. It wasn't flashy, just homey, something that felt like mine after years of sharing space that never truly belonged to me. Then there was Lydia Crane, president of the Oak Ridge Neighborhood Alliance, or ONA, as she proudly called it. Lydia had this air about her, the kind of woman who wore sweater sets in 90-degree weather and wielded her clipboard like a badge of honor. She showed up on my doorstep 3 days after I moved in, not with a pie or a warm welcome, but with a printout of Ona's covenants and a warning about non-compliant landscaping. She pointed at my string lights. "These aren't regulation. You'll need to remove them immediately." I blinked. I didn't even know we had a homeowners association. At first, I played along. I removed the lights. Then she came for my bird feeder, saying it attracted pests. Next, it was the paint on my mailbox. Apparently Robin's egg blue was too eccentric. I repainted it beige. But it didn't stop there. Lydia was relentless. She walked the neighborhood every morning at 7:00 a.m. sharp, taking notes, snapping pictures, and leaving citations tucked into mailboxes like poison valentines. No one confronted her. People mumbled in grocery store aisles or whispered at backyard BBQs, but no one dared cross her. I started keeping a folder of her notes, all dated, each more absurd than the last. Things escalated when she targeted Mrs. Kim, 2 doors down, 85 years old and nearly blind. She had wind chimes that Lydia claimed violated the quiet enjoyment clause. When Mrs. Kim didn't take them down fast enough, Lydia fined her $200. I offered to help pay it. Lydia fined me for unauthorized interference. It wasn't just about rules anymore. It was about control. And people were scared. The tipping point came when I installed a small fence around my backyard garden. Nothing extravagant, just a 3-foot wooden border to keep the rabbits out and the soil from washing away. Lydia showed up within the hour, demanding to see an ONA-approved design form. I told her I hadn't submitted one because I didn't know that was required. She snapped a photo, scribbled something onto her clipboard, and left without another word. 3 days later, I received a notice stating that I was in violation of community guidelines and owed a $500 fine. If I didn't remove the fence and pay up within 7 days, they'd pursue legal action, including a lien against my home. My hands shook as I read it. A lien over a garden fence. That night, I called a few neighbors. One by one, stories poured out. Paul had been fined for his American flag being too large. The Carters had to repaint their entire garage door because it was a shade too vibrant. Even Lydia's former ally, Dennis from Maple Court, admitted she'd turned on him for planting tulips that weren't native species. The pattern was clear. Lydia enforced rules where she pleased, often inventing new ones on the spot. It wasn't a neighborhood association anymore. It was a dictatorship. Then came the surprise. One rainy afternoon, I was walking my dog when I ran into Greg Crane, Lydia's husband. We'd rarely spoken. He was a quiet man, always seemed to be in the background. But that day, he waved me down. "She's gone too far," he said, almost whispering. "I've seen what she's doing. I have the documents to prove it." He handed me a brown envelope, sealed with tape and marked private. Inside were meeting notes from closed-door O&A sessions, emails where Lydia targeted specific neighbors, including me, and financial spreadsheets showing misappropriated funds. Thousands of dollars from the community reserve had been used for things like consulting fees and enforcement tools, which included a drone and a golf cart she used for patrols. Greg looked at me with eyes full of regret. I didn't know how bad it was until I saw her ruin people's lives. I can't stay silent anymore. That envelope was the match that lit the fire. I reached out to an attorney named Savannah Reed, a local lawyer who specialized in HOA abuse. With Greg's testimony and the pile of violations I'd been collecting, we started building a case. Word spread fast. More neighbors stepped forward, 15 in total. All of us had been bullied, fined, threatened, or harassed by Lydia. We pooled our resources and filed a civil lawsuit against her personally. Not the O&A her. The day in court felt surreal. The room was packed. People stood in the aisles. Lydia arrived dressed like she was attending a charity gala, still gripping her clipboard like it was armor. She didn't even glance at Greg, who sat quietly at our table of plaintiffs. When his name was read out as one of the complainants, Lydia's eyes went wide. You could hear the air leave her lungs. Savannah delivered our case like a scalpel. Each witness, Mrs., Kim, Paul. The Carters detailed how Lydia's actions had caused them emotional distress, financial strain, and fear in their own homes. Then came Greg. His testimony cracked the courtroom wide open. He explained how Lydia had bypassed board votes, forged approval forms, and manipulated the bylaws to target anyone she didn't personally like. When he read aloud an email where she called me a weed in our garden, I felt tears rise, not from hurt, but from the weight of being seen. Lydia's lawyer stammered through a defense, claiming she was maintaining order, but no one bought it. Not after hearing that she'd spent $2,400 of HOA funds on a private investigator to track unsanctioned porch parties. The judge didn't hesitate. Lydia Crane was found personally liable for harassment, intentional emotional distress, and misuse of funds. She was fined $82,000 in damages to be paid from her personal assets. She was barred from holding any HOA position again and stripped of all decision-making power. Every enforcement action she'd issued in the past 2 years would be reevaluated by a neutral third party. As the judge's gavel fell, the courtroom burst into applause. Lydia sat frozen, gripping the clipboard she'd once wielded like a sword. Her face was pale, mouth slightly open, as if the reality hadn't quite hit her yet. I walked out of that courthouse lighter than I'd felt in years. Not because we won, but because we stood up. We turned fear into unity, whispers into testimony, and injustice into consequence. The woman who once ruled Brookdale Hollow like a queen without a crown now had to answer to the very people she tried to silence. And that little blue house on Honeybell Lane, it's still standing. The garden's blooming. The fence is still up. And my porch light glows every evening just the way I like it.